The desert stretched wide and endless, with dunes rising and falling like golden waves. The sun burned high, and the wind carried dry sand across the empty land. For many years this place had been silent, but on that day the silence broke. A group of workers from a nearby village dug near an old ruin. Their tools struck against stone, and the sound echoed under the hot sky. At first, they thought it was another broken wall left from the time of their ancestors. But when they brushed the sand away, they found something different. It was a doorway carved into the earth, its surface covered with strange marks. The oldest worker stepped back at once. His hands trembled as he whispered that such doors were not meant to be opened. The younger men laughed, saying it was only stone, yet none of them dared to touch it again. The villagers soon gathered to see the strange discovery. Women carried jars of water, children climbed the dunes, and men argued over what the doorway meant. Some believe it led to treasure, others believe it led to death. That evening, when the sun began to fall, the governor of the district arrived. He was a man of strict rule, dressed in fine robes though dust clung to his sandals. His name was Malik, and he cared more for riches than for warnings. He ordered the workers to clear the sand and prepare to open the tomb. Yet the priests of the village came forward, raising their staffs. They bowed their heads and warned that no one should step inside. They said the place was marked by shadows of the dead, and that even their forefathers had stayed away from this land. Malik frowned at them. He called their words foolish, saying there was no power in dust and stone. He promised rewards for those who would be brave. Still, no man wished to touch the doorway. Fear grew in their hearts, and whispers spread like fire among dry reeds. Mothers pulled their children away, while men avoided looking at the carvings. Among the crowd stood a young scholar named Amir. He was not strong like the guards nor rich like the governor, but his mind was sharp. He had studied old scrolls and had long searched for signs of forgotten kings. His eyes shone as he gazed at the marks on the doorway. They were not random cuts of stone. They were letters, though faded with age. Amir's heart beat fast. He knew this could be the resting place of a ruler who had been lost from memory. That night Amir returned to his home. With a torch, he searched through his collection of old papers. Reading by the flickering light, he found stories of a king who ruled with great power but vanished without a trace. Some said he died in battle, others said he was betrayed. Amir traced his finger over the words and thought of the doorway. He felt a strange pull, as if the past itself was calling him to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, in the village, fear grew stronger. The priests gathered in the temple and prayed through the night. They warned that if the tomb was opened, misfortune would fall upon all. The villagers listened with heavy hearts. Some spoke of leaving the land, while others swore they would burn the doorway shut before allowing anyone to pass. But Malik the governor had other plans. He sent a message to his guards, ordering them to prepare tools and torches. He wanted the tomb opened at dawn. When the sun rose, the desert shone like fire. Malik stood tall before the doorway, holding a staff of command. The workers stood back, their hands shaking. The priests shouted warnings, but their voices were drowned by the sound of shovels striking stone. Amir stood nearby, his eyes fixed on the carvings. He noticed symbols of serpents and jackals, animals often linked with the gods of death. Yet, there was something different here. The lines were sharper, the style older than anything he had studied before. The workers cleared the sand away until the full shape of the doorway was revealed. It was tall and narrow, made of black stone unlike the sandstone around it. At its center was a carving of a closed eye. Malik lifted his hand and gave the order. The men pushed, their bodies straining. The doorway groaned, and dust fell from its edges. Then, with a low rumble, it shifted open just a little. A strange wind escaped the gap, dry yet heavy, carrying the scent of incense burned long ago. The crowd stepped back, covering their faces. Some swore they heard whispers carried by the wind, though no words could be understood. Malik laughed, calling it the voice of gold waiting inside. But the priests fell to their knees, begging him to stop. Amir felt both fear and wonder. His heart told him that this was no ordinary tomb. The air itself seemed alive, as if the place had been waiting for someone to open it. He stepped forward, speaking with calm voice. He told Malik that rushing inside would be unwise, that the writings on the doorway could tell them more. But Malik, blinded by greed, waved him away. The doorway was sealed again for the night, for the workers were too frightened to continue. Malik ordered guards to stand watch, though even they looked uneasy as the crowd slowly left. Amir lingered behind. He placed his hand upon the stone and studied the carvings once more. The clothes seemed almost alive in the fading light, as though it watched him in silence. When night fell, the desert grew cold and quiet. The villagers shut their doors, and no fire burned outside. In the temple, the priest spoke of danger, warning that the spirits of the past had been disturbed. In his home, Amir could not sleep. He thought of the lost king, of betrayal, and of truths hidden under sand. He promised himself that he would see inside the tomb, no matter what fear or danger stood in his way. Thus, the doorway stood under the stars, half open and waiting. The desert wind howled around it, and the sand shifted like restless waves. The first step had been taken, and the shadow of the past was ready to rise again. At dawn, the desert light cast long shadows across the sand. The tomb's doorway stood open slightly, a dark slit in the golden landscape. The air around it was heavy. Carrying the scent of old stone and ancient incense, Amir returned early. Carrying a lamp and a small satchel with tools, his heart beat fast, but not with fear alone. It was also with excitement. After years of studying forgotten kings, he had finally found proof of their existence. The guards assigned by Malik looked nervous. They whispered among themselves. Glancing at the dark doorway as if it might suddenly swallow them, Amir called them to attention and spoke calmly. "Stay close and keep your torches ready. The tomb has stood empty for centuries, but we will not face harm if we are careful." One by one, the guards stepped forward. Their boots crunched on sand and broken stones as they entered. Inside, the air was cooler, though still dry. Dust hung in the beams of their torches. Shadows moved along the walls, forming shapes of jackals and serpents carved long ago. The carvings were detailed, showing scenes of warriors and priests, gods and kings. Some carvings seemed almost alive, their eyes carved so sharply that they appeared to follow every movement. Amir examined the walls closely. He traced his fingers over faded letters. He could almost read the words whispered by time itself. "This was not made to hide treasure alone," he murmured. "It was made to tell a story." The guards did not answer, too busy watching the dark corners of the corridor. They shivered as a sudden gust of wind moved through the tomb. Though no opening existed to the outside, it carried a faint smell of burned wood. As if incense had been recently lit. The passage widened, and the group reached a low chamber. The floor was uneven, and broken jars lay scattered as if placed in offerings. Some were shattered, their contents long gone. The walls here were covered with more carvings. One wall showed a priest holding a serpent in his hands while the king looked. Another showed a crowd bowing before a blackened figure. Amir studied the scenes carefully. He realized that the story was not just about the king's rule, but also about betrayal. At the far end of the chamber, a massive stone door stood, taller than any man. Its surface was covered with symbols and inscriptions. A carved eye stared. From the center, closed, yet ominous, the guard stepped back automatically, feeling the weight of its presence. "This is it," Amir whispered. "The king's chamber. Behind this door lies the secret no one dared touch." They tried pushing the door, but it would not move. Amir examined the carvings and noticed small holes at the base of the door. Carefully, he inserted his tools and applied pressure. Slowly, with a sound like grinding stone, the door began to shift. A cloud of dust rose, and the guards coughed. The doorway opened just wide enough for one person to enter at a time. As Amir stepped inside, a strange sensation swept over him. The air felt thicker, almost alive. Shadows moved across the walls, but there was no one there. He held his lamp high, casting light on the chamber. Gold and treasures glittered in the flickering glow. Vases, crowns, and golden statues lined the walls. Yet Amir's eyes were drawn to the center. where a large black sarcophagus rested. Its surface was smooth, with carvings of battles between gods and men. One guard reached for a small golden idol, curiosity overtaking fear. As his fingers touched it, the lamp flickered and went out. Darkness surrounded them. The guard cried out, and another quickly lit a torch to calm him. Amir frowned, noticing that the flame burned unevenly, as if the air itself resisted light. He realized that the tomb was not only old, but protected in some way. Designed to test the courage of those who entered, the chamber felt colder the longer they stayed. Whispers seemed to rise from the walls, though no one spoke. The guards grew uneasy, their voices shaking as they tried to make jokes to hide their fear. Amir ignored them. Focusing on the sarcophagus, he studied the carvings. Tracing the story of the king's rise and battles, he understood that the tomb was not only a resting place but also a message. It told of power, betrayal, and lessons meant to survive even death. Hours passed, and the group decided to rest inside the chamber for a short while. They lit torches and sat near the walls, careful not to touch the sarcophagus. Amir examined more of the inscriptions, discovering names of generals and priests long forgotten. He realized that these carvings were evidence that the king had ruled wisely, and that those around him had betrayed him to gain power. As night approached, shadows grew longer and darker. The guards became more tense. Some swore they saw figures moving in the corner of their eyes. Amir could not explain the sounds or shapes, but he felt that the tomb itself demanded respect. He instructed the men to leave the treasure untouched for now. They had uncovered its secret entrance, but the deeper truth remained hidden. On their way back to the doorway, a soft wind blew through the chamber. It carried a low hum, almost like a chant, rising and falling in rhythm. The guards froze, gripping their torches tightly. Amir, though nervous, felt a strange calm. He realized that this hum was not dangerous, but part of the tomb's design, a signal for those who dared to enter. When they emerged into the sunlight, the desert felt both harsh and welcoming. The group looked back at the doorway, realizing that the tomb was more than just stone and treasure. It was alive in memory, alive in history, and alive in the fear it inspired. Amir made a silent promise that he would return. He would uncover the full story, learn the secrets of the king, and reveal what had been hidden for centuries. That evening, in the village, the priests noticed the light from the tomb. Their faces grew pale, and they whispered prayers to the gods of protection. The villagers, seeing the men return, grew nervous, asking questions about what they had seen. Amir remained silent, keeping the knowledge in his heart. He knew that the tomb's story was only beginning, and that the greatest challenges lay deeper, beyond the massive stone door and into the heart of the king's secrets. Thus, the tomb waited in the desert, silent yet watchful. Its treasures glittered in the hidden chamber. Its carvings told stories of power and betrayal, and its shadows promised more than gold. Amir knew that opening the tomb had awakened something old, something patient, and something that had been waiting for centuries to be understood. The guards followed Amir as he stepped deeper into the tomb. The corridor narrowed, forcing them to walk in a single line. The walls here were smoother, polished over centuries, but the carvings grew more vivid. They told stories of great battles, kings leading armies, and gods who ruled from the skies. Each figure seemed alive, moving under the flickering torchlight. Even the guards, normally fearless, slowed their steps, their eyes wide with awe and unease. At the end of the corridor, a massive door loomed, unlike the one they had passed before. This door was carved from black stone so dark it seemed to absorb the light from their torches. Around it were intricate designed serpents coiled around the eyes of gods, soldiers bowing before kings, and priests holding strange instruments. Amir studied the carvings carefully. He could see the story of the king's life etched into stone. He realized that this tomb was more than a resting place. It was a message, a history preserved for all who dared to read it with careful hands. Amir traced the symbols and pushed against the door. It did not move at first, but after a few minutes of effort, a low rumble echoed through the tomb. The door shifted slowly, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The air grew colder, heavier, as if the room itself breathed around them. The guards hesitated at the threshold. The shadows inside seemed to move, stretching along the walls and floor. Yet Amir stepped forward, holding his lamp high to illuminate the space. The chamber was enormous. Its walls were lined with gold and gemstones, reflecting the torchlight. In a dazzling display, statues of kings, warriors, and animals stood in perfect order. Golden cups, jars, and chests filled the room. At first glance, it seemed like a treasure room. But Amir's eyes were drawn to the center. There lay a black sarcophagus, its surface carved with scenes of war and peace, victory and loss. The carvings showed the king in battle, crowned by the gods, surrounded by loyal soldiers. But there were also warning symbols of betrayal, shadows, of men who had turned against him. One of the guards, a young man named Rami, stepped forward, curiosity overtaking caution. He reached out to touch a golden idol shaped like a falcon. As soon as his fingers brushed the smooth metal, the air shifted. A sudden gust extinguished their lamps, plunging the chamber into darkness. Rami cried out, and the other guards fumbled to relight their torches. The flames sputtered, casting dancing shadows along the walls. Amir's heart raced, but he kept calm. He understood that the tomb was testing them. The group moved carefully, their footsteps echoing in the large chamber. Amir examined the sarcophagus more closely. Its carvings were unlike anything he had seen before. Scenes of gods and men intertwined, showing the king's victories and the loyalty of his people. But hidden among these images were subtle carvings of betrayal priests whispering in shadows, soldiers turning their backs, eyes of men filled with fear and greed. Amir realized that this king had not only ruled with power, but had been betrayed by those he trusted most. Hours passed as they explored the chamber. They discovered smaller rooms branching from the main hall, each filled with more treasures and carvings. One room contained jars of preserved food, another held weapons that gleamed despite centuries of dust. Yet the deeper they went, the heavier the air felt, the temperature dropped, and the shadows grew longer. Whispers seemed to rise from the walls, faint voices that spoke in a language none of them recognized. The guards clutched their torches tightly, glancing nervously at one another. Amir did not fear the whispers. Instead, he listened closely, trying to understand the story the tomb was telling. He realized that the king had prepared this place not only to hold his body, but to preserve his legacy. The treasures were a distraction. The carvings were the truth. In the shadows, the cold, the whispers, they were warnings for those who would enter without respect or care. As they approached the sarcophagus, Amir noticed a small panel at its base. It was hidden among the carvings, almost invisible. Carefully, he pressed it. A section of the floor shifted, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The guards gasped, but Amir held up his hand to calm them. "This is where the true secret lies," he said softly. "The king's story is deeper than gold or jewels. We must go down carefully." The staircase was steep and narrow, filled with stale air. Each step echoed in the silence, and the walls seemed to close in around them. When they reached the bottom, they found a hidden hall. Its walls were covered in painted murals, vibrant even after centuries. The paintings told of the king's early life, his rise to power, and his battles to protect his people. But they also showed betrayal priests plotting in secret, soldiers taking bribes, and men in shadows ready to strike. Amir studied each image with growing understanding. This is why the priests feared the tomb. Amir whispered to the guards, not because of curses or spirits, but because it holds the truth. The king's enemies wanted to hide their crimes, but he left them here for those who could read the story. The guards nodded, understanding at last that the danger was not in the tomb itself, but in the knowledge it contained. They spent hours examining the hall, discovering details that no book had recorded, names of men long forgotten, cities lost to time, and battles remembered only in whispers, all preserved in stone and paint. Amir realized that this tomb was a library, a record of a kingdom erased by fear and greed. The king's life, victories, and betrayals were frozen in time, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover them. As they prepared to leave, the air shifted again. A soft wind moved through the chamber, carrying the faint scent of incense. The torches flickered but did not go out. Shadows stretched along the walls, not threatening but watchful, as if the tomb itself recognized Amir's respect. He felt a strange calm and knew that the first part of the king's story had been revealed. The rest remained hidden, waiting for further exploration. When they emerged into the corridor, the guards were silent. Each man felt the weight of what they had seen. Treasure had been found, yes, but it was the truth of the king's life and betrayal that lingered in their minds. Amir looked back at the sarcophagus, its black stone glinting faintly in the torchlight. He promised himself that he would return, that he would uncover every secret buried within these walls. Outside, the desert sun had begun to set. The golden sands glowed, but Amir's thoughts were far away, in the hidden hole beneath the sarcophagus. The tomb had revealed its first secret, but he knew there were more, darker truths waiting deeper inside. He felt both awe and determination. The king's story was not finished, and neither was his journey. The night had fallen over the desert, and the village lay under a sky filled with stars. A soft wind carried the chill of evening, moving through empty streets and around small homes. Inside the village, whispers spread quickly. The priests gathered. In the temple, their voices low and urgent. They spoke of the tomb, of the black sarcophagus, and of the shadows that had been disturbed. They warned that misfortune could follow anyone who had entered without proper care. Meanwhile, Amir and the guards had returned to the small camp they had set up near the tomb. Torches burned, and small fires provided warmth, but the air was heavy with tension. Two of the guards, Rami and Salim, were visibly pale. They had been uneasy ever since touching the treasures in the tomb. Their hands shook, and every sound in the desert seemed louder than it should have been. Amir noticed their discomfort and tried to reassure them. "The tomb is old, not evil," he said. "We have nothing to fear if we remain careful and respectful." But as the night deepened, strange things began to occur. Rami suddenly cried out in pain. Clutching his stomach, Salim ran to help him, but he too began to shiver violently. Their bodies burned with fever, and their eyes rolled as if seeing things no one else could see. Amir knelt beside them, examining their symptoms. He had seen illness before, but this was different. Their voices trembled as they spoke of shadows moving in the sand, of whispers calling them back to the tomb. The other guards became frightened. They glanced at Amir, hoping for guidance, but he had no immediate answer. He instructed them to fetch water and lay the men on blankets near the fire. Still, the two continued to cry out, speaking of voices and shapes that had no explanation. Amir feared that the stories the priests had told were not mere superstition. There was something in the tomb, a presence that responded to those who entered. As the night grew darker, the priests arrived at the camp. Their robes rustled as they moved quietly, and their faces were grave. One priest, an elder named Tahir, approached Amir. "You must not disturb what has been buried," he said. "The king's tomb was protected for a reason. Those who enter unprepared will face the consequences." Amir listened carefully. He respected the priests, but he knew that fear alone could not uncover the truth. "I seek knowledge, not harm," he replied. "We have only entered to study the history. We will not take the treasures." Tahir's eyes softened slightly, but he still shook his head. "The past remembers all who enter," he said. "Even the walls themselves carry warnings. The fever you see now is not the only test. The tomb will reveal its truth slowly, and it will demand patience and care." Amir nodded. He understood that the tomb was more than a resting place for gold or jewels. It held the story of a king, a story that had been hidden by fear and betrayal. The first night's curse, as the priests called it, was only a part of the lesson the tomb provided. Hours passed, and the fever of the guards did not lessen. Amir remained by their side, comforting them and speaking softly. He realized that the tomb's influence might not be supernatural in the way the priests believed. Perhaps it was the long isolation, the fear, and the weight of history that affected the men, yet he could not deny the strange sensations in the air. The way shadows seemed to move and the soft whispers that floated around them. By midnight, The two guards were exhausted. Their breathing grew slower, and their voices faded. Amir remained vigilant, keeping watch over them while the other men slept lightly around the fire. He thought about the tomb and the black sarcophagus. The king who had been buried there must have known of the dangers, the hidden hall, the carvings, and the treasures were designed to test those who entered, to separate the careful from the careless. In the early hours of the morning, Amir finally allowed himself to rest briefly, yet, even in sleep, his mind wandered to the tomb. He dreamed of the king, a tall figure with piercing eyes, standing in the shadows of his chamber. The king seemed to watch him, not with anger, but with expectation. Amir awoke with a start, the first rays of sunlight brushing the desert. The guards were still weak but breathing steadily. The immediate danger had passed, but the lesson was clear. The tomb was not a place to rush or take lightly. When the villagers saw the guards recovering, they grew wary. Mothers kept their children inside, and men whispered prayers for protection. The priest instructed them to respect the tomb and to offer no more interference until proper rituals could be performed. Amir, however, could not wait. He knew that the tomb's story was only beginning, and that the secrets deeper within would reveal truths that had been hidden for centuries. Amir returned to the tomb at dawn, alone this time. He examined the carvings at the entrance and felt a strange calm. The first night's curse, whether illness or warning, had taught him a lesson. In respect, he understood that he must move carefully, honor the history, and prepare for what lay ahead. As he traced the faded symbols, he realized that the king had not only ruled a kingdom, but had created a place that challenged anyone who sought to uncover his story. The desert around him was quiet, but Amir felt the weight of the tomb pressing against the air. Every grain of sand seemed to whisper history. The black sarcophagus, the treasures, and the hidden hall all awaited the next step. Amir knew that the coming days would demand courage, intelligence, and patience. The king's secrets were protected, but Amir was determined. He would face the tomb's tests, discover the truth, and ensure that the king's story was remembered. By midday, the village returned to its quiet routine, but Amir's thoughts remained with the tomb. The first night's curse had passed, but its memory stayed in his mind. He understood the balance between fear and discovery, between caution and courage. The tomb had revealed its first challenge, testing the bodies and minds of those who entered. Amir was ready for the next step, knowing that the king's history was hidden deeper, where even priests had feared to tread. The sun had barely risen over the desert, casting long golden rays across the sand. Amir returned to the tomb alone, his lamp and tools carefully packed in a small satchel. The first night's experience had taught him patience and respect. He knew that the tomb was more than a place of treasure. It was a guardian of history, a keeper of secrets that had survived centuries. As he approached the massive black doorway, the carvings seemed sharper in the morning light. The eye in the center, closed and unreadable, gave him the feeling that the king himself was watching. Amir stepped into the tomb quietly. The air was cooler than outside, heavy with the scent of incense that had long since faded. Dust motes floated in the light of his lamp. He moved slowly along the corridor, examining the carvings he had seen before. Warriors, priests, and kings stood frozen in stone, yet Amir felt that they were alive with memory. His heart beat steadily, not from fear, but from anticipation. He had learned from the first night that the tomb rewarded careful observation and punished haste. As he entered the main chamber, the treasures glimmered under his lamp, but Amir ignored them. His eyes searched the walls, the carvings, and the floor for anything he had missed. Then, something caught his attention. One of the panels near the black sarcophagus was slightly different from the rest. It seemed older, with carvings worn, smooth, almost hidden in plain sight. Amir knelt and traced his fingers over the symbols. They were subtle, telling a story of the secret hidden beyond the chamber. He pressed lightly on one of the carvings. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a soft click, a section of the wall shifted inward. A narrow passage revealed itself, hidden behind the stone. Dust fell from the opening, and a cold wind blew softly from within. Amir's heart raced. This was the hidden hall the scrolls had mentioned in ancient texts he had studied. It was a place no one had entered for centuries. A secret meant only for those who sought the truth with respect. Amir crawled carefully into the passage. The air was stale but breathable, and the walls were close enough that he could touch both sides. Shadows stretched along the narrow corridor, but there was no danger. Only silence, heavy with time, filled the space. The passage led downward, deeper into the earth, and Amir could feel the temperature drop as he moved. The hidden hall was below the main chamber, protected not only by stone but by secrecy itself. Finally, he emerged into a small chamber. The walls were painted, not carved, and the colors were still vivid despite the centuries. The paintings depicted the life of the forgotten king, scenes of his childhood, his victories, and his council meetings lined the walls. But there were darker images as well. Priests whispered in corners, soldiers betrayed their comrades, and shadows loomed over moments of victory. Amir realized that the king's enemies had been clever. They had spread stories of curses and danger to hide the truth, but the king had left this hidden hall to reveal everything to those who could find it. Amir moved from one wall to another, studying the murals carefully. Each image told a story, each gesture carried meaning. He saw the king standing strong among his people, yet alone in moments of betrayal. The paintings showed names, symbols, and places that matched the ancient scrolls Amir had read. It was a record of history written not on paper, but on stone and pigment, designed to survive time itself. Amir understood the care that had gone into creating this hall. Every detail mattered, every shadow, every colored dot at the far end of the chamber. Amir noticed a small stone coffin, different from the black sarcophagus above. It was unadorned, yet a seal held it shut. The seal was marked with symbols of the king's lineage. Amir knelt to study it. This was not a tomb in the usual sense. It did not contain a body, but something more important: records, scrolls, or messages intended to tell the king's true story. He traced the symbols carefully, knowing that breaking the seal improperly could damage the knowledge inside. Amir took a deep breath and gently opened the coffin. Inside, he found scrolls carefully preserved, tied with threads that had not completely rotted. He unrolled one and read. The writing was elegant, describing the king's life, his achievements, and the betrayal of priests who had feared his power. The king had been murdered, not in battle, but by those closest to him. He had left instructions, warnings, and truths meant for anyone brave enough to discover them. Amir's heart pounded as he realized the importance of what he held. The hidden hall seemed to hum softly as he read. It was as if the tomb itself approved of his care. Rewarding respect with knowledge, Amir understood that the first night's curse had been a test, the illness of the guards, the whispers, the shadows, they had all been reminders to proceed with patience and caution. Now, he was inside the true secret of the tomb. He felt both awe and responsibility. The king's story had survived centuries because someone had hidden it carefully. Amir was that someone now. Hours passed as Amir read through the scrolls. The king's words were clear and deliberate, warning of betrayal, pride, and greed. He described the history of his kingdom, the loyalty of some men, and the treachery of others. Amir took careful notes, comparing the paintings to the text. Every detail matched, confirming the truth of the king's life and reign. He realized that the tomb had been designed to preserve history, in a way no ordinary record could survive. Finally, Amir returned to the main chamber, careful to close the hidden passage behind him. The treasures and the black sarcophagus waited, silently, as if nothing had changed. Yet Amir knew the truth was deeper now. The hidden hall had revealed the real story of the king, the betrayal of the priests, and the purpose of the tomb. It was not a place of fear or superstition, but of history and knowledge, preserved for those who could see beyond gold and jewels. As he emerged into the desert sunlight, Amir felt a mixture of relief and excitement. He had discovered the hidden passage, uncovered the king's true story, and learned the importance of respect and patience. The tomb still held more secrets, and the journey was far from over. But Amir knew that he had taken a critical step toward understanding a history that had been buried for centuries, he returned to the village, careful to protect the scrolls and his notes. The priests watched him silently, knowing that their warnings had been both true and misunderstood. The villagers, unaware of the hidden hall, went about their daily work. Amir, however, carried the knowledge of the king's story in his heart, ready to uncover more when the time came. The desert wind blew softly, as if acknowledging his careful progress, and the tomb waited silently, guarding the remaining secrets of a kingdom long forgotten. Amir returned to the tomb with renewed determination. The sun had barely risen, painting the desert in soft gold, yet he felt no need to hurry. The hidden hall had already revealed much, but he knew the most important secret still lay beneath. The black sarcophagus. He carried the scrolls carefully in his satchel, their fragile pages protected from wind and sand. The desert was quiet, but Amir felt a strange anticipation in the air, as if the tomb itself awaited his next step. The massive black doorway loomed in front of him, the closed eye carved at its center staring silently. The guards who had accompanied him before were still recovering, so Amir went alone this time. Each step toward the tomb was careful, deliberate. He traced the symbols along the doorway and spoke softly, paying respect to the king whose resting place he was about to enter. The air was cooler here, and dust motes floated in the light of his lamp as he stepped inside. The main chamber glimmered faintly under his torchlight. The treasures remained untouched, but Amir's eyes were on the black sarcophagus. He studied the carvings around it, noticing details he had not seen before. Scenes of battles, offerings, and priests filled the stone walls. Yet hidden among these were subtle symbols, small markings indicating hidden compartments. Amir knelt and traced them with his fingers, realizing that the sarcophagus was not only a resting place, but also a container of knowledge. Carefully, Amir examined the base of the sarcophagus. He found a small, hidden panel. Pressing it gently, a section of the stone lifted, revealing a narrow stairway descending deeper into the earth. The passage smelled of old stone and faint incense, as, if untouched for centuries, Amir descended slowly, feeling the walls close around him. Every step echoed softly, and the air grew colder. He reached the bottom and entered a hidden chamber. This chamber was smaller than the hidden hall above, but even more precise. The walls were lined with scrolls, tablets, and bundles tied carefully. Gold and jewels were few here. The focus was on knowledge. Amir unrolled one scroll and began reading. The handwriting was elegant and deliberate. The words revealed the king's life in detail, his victories, his wisdom, and the betrayal that had led to his death. The king's own hand described how priests he trusted had turned against him. Fearing his growing power, Amir realized that this was the king's true legacy. The tomb above, with its treasures and shadows, had been a test. The hidden hall had revealed history in images, but this chamber revealed it in the king's own voice. The betrayal was clear. The priests had killed him secretly, spreading stories of curses to keep others away. Their fear had preserved their crime, and generations had believed the tomb was dangerous. Now Amir held the proof that the king's story had been hidden, not by spirits or magic, but by human fear. Hours passed as Amir read through the scrolls. The king had described his life, from childhood to the final days of his reign. He had written about battles won and cities protected, about advisors who were loyal and soldiers who betrayed. The scrolls also included warnings, instructions, and reflections on justice and trust. Amir took careful notes, connecting the story in the scrolls with the murals he had seen in the hidden hall. Every detail matched, confirming the truth of what had been recorded. Amir felt the weight of responsibility. This knowledge was powerful. It could expose centuries of lies and reveal the truth of the king's reign. He understood why the priests had feared it and why they had spread tales of curses. The tomb was not dangerous in itself. It was the truth it held that could shake minds and challenge authority. Amir realized that he had become a guardian of the king's secret, entrusted with history that had been hidden for generations. The chamber seemed alive with quiet energy. Every scroll, tablet, and marking told a story. The king's words were precise and careful, designed to survive the passage of time. Amir marveled at the foresight of the king. He had prepared his tomb not just for burial, but for truth to be preserved and discovered by those who approached with respect and wisdom. Amir felt a deep connection with the king, a shared understanding that history must be remembered accurately. As he continued reading, Amir discovered a final scroll sealed with wax. Its markings were different, more urgent. Breaking the seal carefully, he unrolled the parchment. The writing was personal, almost a message to anyone who might uncover it. The king wrote about the betrayal, about the priests who had killed him to protect their own power, and about the lies that had followed. He warned that truth could be dangerous, but also necessary. Amir felt the gravity of the king's words. They were a warning, a lesson, and a gift all at once. Amir spent the rest of the day studying the scrolls, recording key details and cross-referencing with the murals above. The tomb, the treasures, and the hidden halls were all part of a larger story. The king had designed this place to teach patience, courage, and respect for history. Amir understood now that the first night's illness of the guards, the whispers, and the shadows were all tests designed to prepare anyone entering for the truth that lay hidden. By evening, Amir returned to the main chamber, carrying copies of his notes carefully. The black sarcophagus loomed silently, as if watching him. He replaced the stone panel, and in short, everything was as it had been. The treasures remained untouched, and the hidden chamber remained secret. Amir knew the importance of preserving both the physical space and the knowledge it contained. The king's secret was now known to him, but it was not yet shared with the world outside. The desert sky was darkening, and the first stars appeared. The wind carried the cool scent of sand and stone. Amir walked slowly, reflecting on the weight of his discovery. The tomb had revealed its deepest secret, showing him not only the king's life, but also the human fear and betrayal that had hidden it for centuries. He understood that history could be distorted by those who seek power, but truth could survive if respected and protected. Amir returned to the village quietly, careful not to reveal too much too soon. The priests watched silently, their expressions serious. They had warned of curses. But Amir knew the danger had always been human, not supernatural. The king's secret was safe with him, and he felt a mixture of awe, responsibility, and determination. The tomb still held mysteries, but the most important truth had been revealed. The king's story, once hidden by fear and betrayal, was now known to someone who would honor it. The desert sun rose slowly, painting the sands with warm light. Amir walked toward the tomb, carrying his notes and scrolls carefully. He felt a sense of purpose, knowing that he had uncovered the deepest secrets of the king's tomb. The black doorway loomed ahead, silent and imposing, yet familiar. The eye carved in the center seemed to watch him without judgment. Amir's mind was focused. He was not here for treasure, but to understand history and share the truth that had been hidden. For centuries, inside, the air was cooler, filled with the faint scent of incense long gone. Dust hung in the light of Amir's lamp. He moved carefully, tracing the carvings along the walls. Each figure of kings, priests, and warriors seemed more alive now, telling their story silently. The treasures glittered in the light, but Amir ignored them. His attention was on the black sarcophagus and the hidden chamber beneath it, where the king's most important secrets had been kept. Amir opened the hidden panel carefully and descended the narrow staircase. The hidden chamber greeted him quietly, the scrolls and tablets waiting as they had for centuries. He unrolled a scroll and reread the words he had studied before. The king's life, his victories, and the betrayal of those he trusted most were recorded in detail. Amir felt a deep connection to the king. This was not just a story of a ruler, but a lesson about humanity, loyalty, and courage. As Amir examined the scrolls, he realized that the tomb's design had been deliberate. Every test, every shadow, every whisper of the first night had prepared him for this moment. The illness of the guards, the strange sounds, and the hidden passage had all taught patience, respect, and careful observation. The tomb itself was a teacher, guiding anyone who entered toward understanding. Amir understood now that the treasures above were secondary. The true treasure was the king's story, preserved for the future. Hours passed as Amir carefully copied details from the scrolls. He recorded names of generals, priests, and citizens who had shaped the kingdom. He noted battles, alliances, and betrayals. Every piece of information brought the king's life into sharper focus. The king had ruled with wisdom, faced betrayal, and sought to preserve truth. Amir felt both awe and responsibility. The knowledge he now held could change how history remembered this kingdom. He paused and examined the murals in the hidden hall above. The painted scenes and the written scrolls aligned perfectly. The king's life was depicted in color and word, and every detail was preserved with care. Amir understood that the tomb had been built, not only to honor the king, but to ensure that anyone who discovered it could learn from his story. The king had planned for centuries of silence, yet also for the possibility that someone brave and respectful would find the truth. Amir's thoughts turned to the priests who had guarded the tomb. Their fear had been real, but misplaced. They had misunderstood the purpose of the tomb, seeing only danger where the king had left lessons. Amir knew that history often hides behind fear, and that truth can survive if someone is willing to look closely. He felt a responsibility not just to learn, but to share the knowledge carefully, ensuring that the king's story would be remembered accurately. As the sun climbed higher, Amir returned to the main chamber. He replaced the stone panel, securing the hidden passage. The black sarcophagus stood silently, guarding the tomb as it had for centuries. Amir felt respect for the king and for the design of the tomb. Every step, every test, every secret had been deliberate. The tomb was more than stone and treasure. It was history, preserved with care, waiting for someone worthy to uncover it. When Amir emerged into the desert sunlight, the heat and brightness seemed less harsh. He walked slowly, carrying his notes carefully. The village lay in the distance, quiet and calm. The priests had watched silently, and Amir could see understanding in their eyes. They knew that he had learned what few others ever would. The tomb had revealed its story to someone who respected it, and the first night's curse had been only a test, not a threat. Amir returned to the village square and called the priests together. Carefully, he shared the story of the king, the betrayal of the priests who had feared him, and the lessons preserved in the tomb. He showed them copies of the notes he had taken, describing the hidden hall, the murals, and the scrolls beneath the sarcophagus. The priests listened, amazed. Their fear of curses and spirits gave way to awe and respect for the king's foresight and wisdom. Word of Amir's discoveries spread through the village. People came to hear the story of the tomb, not for treasure, but for the history it held. The king's life, once forgotten, became known again. Children listened with wide eyes as elders spoke of the courage and wisdom preserved in the tomb. Amir felt a sense of fulfillment. The tomb had tested him, taught him patience and respect, and now he was able to share the knowledge with others. The black sarcophagus remained in its chamber, silent and watchful. The treasures glittered faintly, but the true value was in the story Amir had uncovered. The hidden passage and the scrolls beneath it held the king's most personal thoughts. In reflections, Amir understood that he had become a guardian of history, entrusted with the preservation of truth. He felt a deep connection to the king, a shared understanding that knowledge must be protected and respected. As the sun set over the desert, Amir stood outside the tomb and looked toward the horizon. The golden sands stretched endlessly, and the sky turned shades of pink and orange. The tomb, silent and imposing, had revealed its secrets carefully, teaching lessons about trust, betrayal, and the importance of history. Amir knew that the king's story would survive, not through fear or superstition, but through respect and understanding. The village returned to its peaceful rhythm. Yet the story of the tomb lingered in every conversation. The priests no longer whispered of curses, but of courage, wisdom, and the preservation of history. Amir continued his work, recording every detail he had learned, ensuring that the king's story would endure for generations. The tomb had revealed its final secret, and the truth of the king, once hidden by betrayal and fear, now shown clearly for all to see. Amir looked back one last time at the tomb, the black doorway silent beneath the stars. He understood that the king had not only preserved his story, but had created a test of character and respect. Those who entered with greed or disrespect would find only shadows and fear. Those who approached with patience, care, and honor would uncover truth. Amir smiled quietly, knowing that he had passed the test. The tomb's secrets were safe, and history had been restored.